Hello friends, welcome. Now we are going to see about the topic of evolution. In this video, we are going to discuss clearly and descriptively what is an evolution and what are the processes happened in the evolution about Charles Darwin, etc. So coming to the first introduction. Evolution is the change in the inherited characteristics. Means nothing but what are the characters we had from our parents. There will be a change in the characters in the further generations. We call it as evolution. It is very simply. And of biological populations, it happens in the living things over successive generations. Next, evolutionary process gives rise to a diversity at every level of biological organizations, right? For each and every stage, the organisms will differ from generations to generations because that we call it as diversity, means different, including the species, individual organisms, and molecules such as DNA and proteins. All these things will be differ from one another. And next, origin of life. The origin of life is considered a unique event in the history of universe. The universe is about 20 billion years old. It includes a huge clusters of galaxies which contain stars, clouds of gas and dust. The Big Bang theory explains origin of universe which states that the universe arose from a huge explosion unimaginable in physical of long entity. As the universe expanded, the temperature decreases. Hydrogen and helium were formed sometimes later. The gases condensed under gravitation and formed the galaxies of the present day universe. In the solar system of the Milky Way galaxy, Earth was supposed to have been formed about 4.5 billion years back. So, this is about the universe. Next, the Earth. The Earth was being formed by 4.5 billion years before. Water vapor, methane, ammonia, and carbon dioxide were released from the molten mass. The UV rays, means ultraviolet rays from the sun, broke up the water into hydrogen and oxygen. So the lighter hydrogen gas escaped from the surface. Because of that, the hydrogen balloons will fly because of its lighter nature, which is the first molecule in the atomic table, right? While oxygen combined with the other compounds, methane, ammonia, etc., to form the water, carbon dioxide, etc. As the water vapor cooled, the water fell as rain and filled all the depressions to form the oceans and other water bodies. From the oxygen, ozone layer was formed, O3, the chemical formula for ozone. Life started appearing, nothing but origin of life, about 500 million years after the formation of Earth. That is, for about 4 billion years ago. Coming to the theories of origin of life, each and every scientist has been confronted their own theory of origin of life. The various theories were proposed to explain the origin of life. Theory of the very first theory is theory of special creation. Next, theory of panspermia, cosmozoic theory. We also call it as. Next, theory of spontaneous generation. And the final theory, theory of chemical evolution. Now at the first we are going to discuss about theory of special creation. Conventional religious literature talks about the theory of special creation. So the name itself suggests the creation is because of God. So the God created all of us. We are living all the moments, all everything is being the creation of God. According to which God, the supernatural being, created the earth, light, plants, and animals. This theory has three suggested the views. All living organisms, different species or types of plants and animals that we see today were created as such. So, because they are telling that it should be in a such a way, because of that they are created. The diversity of life forms was always the same since the time of creation and will remain the same in the future also. The same diversity will be continued in the future and in the present. Earth is about 4,000 years old. All these ideas underwent a drastic changes during 19th century when the Charles Darwin showed that existing life forms shares similarities to varying degree among themselves and also with those life forms that existed millions of lives ago. Extinctions also took place during a different phases of geological history. And next, theory of panspermia or cosmozoic theory. Some scientists believe that life has come on Earth from other planets or outer space. Early Greek philosophers thought units called spores or pansperms came on Earth along with meteoroids, and they might have evolved into a present day forms. This is the picture which depicts about the spores which is coming from the other planet along with meteoroids. This is the Earth. Next, theory of spontaneous generation. It was also believed that living organisms, life, arose from decaying matter like straw. But Louis Pasteur demonstrated that life can arise only from pre existing life. He showed that no life arose from the heat killed yeast broth that was kept in pre sterilized closed flask. So, he has been told that when you kill the heat killed broth, so there will be no life has been evolved. While new organisms aroses from the heat killed yeast that were kept in the flask left open in the air because it was open. If this flask was closed, no life will get formed. If the flask was open, then only the life will get formed. For example, in this first picture, we are boiling the heat killed yeast broth. So it is being closed, so there is no any growth. In the second, so they broke the neck, then the microbial growth has been seen. Next, an experiment to demonstrate the spontaneous generation. First one is observations. Flies land on the meat that is left uncovered. Later, maggots appear on the meat. Hypothesis. Flies produces the maggot. So this is the observation and hypothesis. Hypothesis means assumption. May be correct or may not be correct. Coming to the procedure, controlled variables jars, type of meat with location, temperature and time. Second one is manipulated variables. One is controlled variables, other one is manipulated variables. So we have the two jars. Gauze covering that keeps the flies away from the meat. So responding the variables whether maggots appear or not. So these are uncovered jars and these are covered jars. So in the uncovered jars the maggots appeared. In the covered jars no maggots appear, similar to the Louis Pasteur experiment. So conclusion. Maggots forms only when the flies come in contact with the meat. So spontaneous generation of maggots do not occur. So this is the final conclusion of this experiment. Next, theory of chemical evolution. This theory was proposed by Operin and Haldane. They proposed that first time form that could have come from a pre-existing non-living organic molecule like RNA, protein, etc. And that the formation of life was preceded by chemical evolution, that is formation of diverse organic molecule from inorganic constituents. The condition on Earth that favored the chemical evolution were very high temperature, volcanic storms, and reducing atmosphere that contain methane, ammonia, water vapor, etc. In this theory, they are proposed that chemicals are responsible for evolution. Because of that only they named it as chemical evolution. And next, experimental proof for chemical evolution of life. First, Stanley Miller and Urey created a condition similar to the primitive atmosphere in the laboratory using glass apparatus and tubes. They created an electric discharge using the electrodes in a conical flask containing methane, ammonia, hydrogen, water vapor at 800 degrees Celsius. So they want to see whether the chemicals will create the life or not. The water containing chamber was heated to provide the water vapor. After a week, they observed the formation of amino acids. In similar experiments, many other scientists observed the formation of sugar, nitrogen bases, lipids, amino acids, and even pigments also. So, the analysis of meteorites also revealed the presence of similar compounds, indicating the occurrence of similar processes elsewhere in the space. So, the chemical evolution of life was more or less accepted. So this is the Miller-Urey experiment. In this picture we can able to see, so this is electrodes are being discharged with the lightning stimulation. So these are the electrodes, positive and negative. This is discharging the lightning stimulation. So here we have the gases, methane, carbon dioxide, etc. So and now this is the water. So water has been heated to produce the water vapor. So now the condenser liquid with complex molecules has been arrived. So later the water vapor everything was being discharged. Here we have the stopcocks for testing the samples. So the heated water vapor, so the heated water from the ocean. So all these things has been formed with a condensed samples has been arrived at this bottom. Origin of life. So origin of first life. The first non-cellular form of life could have originated 3 billion years ago. So there would have been a giant molecule like RNA, protein, or polysaccharides. These capsules are able to replicate and reproduce. The first cellular forms of life may have appeared about less than 2 billion years ago. They must have been a single cells. All life forms have appeared in water bodies. This is theory of abiogenesis, that is, the first form of life arose slowly through evolutionary process from non-living molecules. It is accepted by the scientist. Once formed, these single cells must have evolved into a diverse, complex organisms of today. Next, so this, uh, this the video will explain about the origin of life. So how it been, we'll see in the next videos. Next, evolution of life. Coming to the several assumptions were to propose the evolution of life, of which the first was religious literature, which tells us about the theory of special creation, right? This theory has three connotations. One, that all the living organisms, species, or types that we see today were created as such. Two, that the diversity was always same since the creation and will be the same in the future also. And the third connotations are the earth was about 4000 years old. So these ideas was being strongly challenged during the 19th century by Charles Darwin based on his observation made during a sea voyage in the ships called HMS Beagle around the world. He concluded that existing living forms share the similarities to varying degrees not only among themselves but also with life forms that existed million of years ago. He said extinctions of different life forms took place. Also, the new forms of life arose at different periods on the history of the earth. So, this is the HMS Beagle survey. This took place in 1831 to 1836. So, these are the areas. So, this is the Galapagos Island. So, these are the areas they covered in the HMS Beagle ship. Organisms have undergone gradual evolution due to variations of characteristics which enable some to survive better in natural conditions like climate, food, physical factors, etc. Would outbreed other that are less endowed to survive under such natural conditions. It was referred as fitness of individual, population, which means reproductive fitness. Those who are better fit in an environment leave more progeny than the others who will survive more and hence are selected by the nature. He called it as natural selection and implied it as a mechanism of evolution. So Alfred Wallace, a naturalist who worked in Malay archipelago, has also come to similar conclusion that Darwin had, that all the existing life forms share similarities and share common ancestors. However, these ancestors were present at different periods in the history of Earth, like epochs, periods, and eras. They also concluded is that Earth is a very old, not thousands of years, as was thought earlier, but billions of years old. So, geological history of Earth. With advancing studies on evolution, scientists were able to conclude that Earth is billions of years old. So the geological time scale is divided into eras, periods, epochs, etc. The rocks are formed by sedimentation. A cross section of Earth indicates the arrangement of the sedimentation one over the other during the long history of Earth. Different sediments of different ages contains different life forms which probably died during the formation of particular sediment. For example, if the rocks has been formed, later the ice was being formed like rock cave people. and later the cave people was been not there when the ice age has been appeared. So all these things has been, if there will be transformation of the geology, there are been extinction of the organisms and animals, and the new life has been created one after the other. So certain organisms got exist during these phases. For example, dinosaurs, those found towards the upper layer resembles the modern organisms, while the other in the deeper layers were the simpler and older forms. So evidences for evolution. Coming to the evidences for evolution come from paleontology, which means study of fossils, embryology, study of different types of embryos and their development, comparative anatomy and morphology, molecular homology and biogeography. So, first, paleontology is a study of fossils found in the rocks to support the organic evolution. So, the study of fossils from different sedimentary layers indicate the geological time period in which the organisms existed. So, at what time the organisms, by rating the earth life. So, the life formed from varied over time, and certain life forms are restricted to certain geological lifespan. The new forms of the life that have appeared at different times in the history of earth is being revealed by paleontology. This is the picture of the paleontology, means these are the fossils. So we have the different fossils. Next, embryology. So it is a study based upon the observation of certain common features during embryonic stages of all vertebrates. Ernest Haeckel proposed the Biogenetic Law, which states that ontogeny recapitulates phylology, that is, developmental embryological stages of an organism, which is nothing but ontogeny, recapitulate their evolutionary history, which we call it as phylogeny. Vertebrate embryos show similarities, which are all the vertebrate embryos, and develop a row of gill slits, but they are functionally only in fish and not found in any other vertebrates. Notochord is present in all vertebrate embryos. But this proposal was disproved by Ernest von Baer. He noted that embryos never pass through the adult stage of other animals. So these are the embryos and evolutionary history. In this picture, we can able to see the gill slits. So tail. So both will be there. Tail will be there for the fish and reptile. The gill slits will be specifically only will be there for the fishes. And here we have the gill slits. So this will be seen in the birds as well as the humans. Both will not be there in the after development. Only during the embryonical period only we can see these gill slits. Comparative anatomy and morphology. Comparative anatomy and morphology shows both similarities and differences among the present day organisms and those existed long before. For example, homology. Homology is the relationship among organs of different groups of organisms that shows similarity in the basic structure and embryonic development but perform different functions. Homology of organs of different organisms indicate their common ancestry. So, homology is found in the bones of the forelimbs of whales, cheetah, birds, amphibians, and humans that have the same basic anatomical structure with bones of humerus, radius, ulna, carpal, metacarpals, and phalanges. That we call it as homology, which means nothing but different species will have the same type of constructions with the same type of limbs. So, the thorns of bougainvillea and tendrils of cucurbita represent the homology. So in this picture we can able to see homology, the homologous organs that are result of divergent evolution, that is the evolutionary process with the same structural development along the different directions due to adaptation of different needs. For example, in this picture these are the flippers of seal for swimming, and these are the wings of birds for flying. This is pentagium of bat for flying, and these are the forelimbs of horse for running. These are the human arm for gasping. All the things have a same structural, but they will function in a different types. All the things will have the humerus, radius ulna, carpals, metacarpals, phalanges. And next, bougainvillea, throne, and cucurbita. Structurally, the both are similar, but functionally, cucurbita is for climbing and bougainvillea is for protection. Analogy. Analogy is the relationship among of different groups of organisms performing the same function irrespective of structural or anatomical differences. For example, eyes of octopus and those of mammals, wings of butterfly and those of birds, flippers of whale or dolphins and those of penguins, tubers of sweet potato, root modified, and those of potato, which is stem modified. Analogy is result of convergent evolution, that is, the evolutionary process where anatomically different structures in different groups of organisms evolve towards the same function. It is the similar conditions that have selected the similar adaptive features in different groups of organisms towards the same function. So here, anatomically, the origin will be for the different, but they'll perform the same function. So, for example, this is the octopus eye and the human eye. The origin will be different, but they will have the same function for eyesight. And the wings of butterflies and the wings of birds. So, but even though their origin was being different, but they'll perform the same functions. These are the analogous structures. So, next, tuber of potato and tuber of sweet potato. So, tuber of potato is a modification of stem, tuber of sweet potato is the modification of root, but both will store the carbohydrates. Starch. Next, molecular homology. Molecular homology refers to similarities in the biomolecules of the different group of organisms. The sequence of nucleotides in the nucleic acid and many proteins are similar in apes and humans. The biochemical similarities point to the same common ancestry of diverse organisms. Next, biogeography. The differential geographical distribution of different organisms also indicates common shared ancestry in that restricted region. The habitat isolation has probably restricted these organisms to particular geographical regions on the earth. Next, theory of natural selection. Darwin made a sea voyage around the world in a sail ship named HMS Beagle. Based on the observations he made during his voyage, he concluded the following: the existed living organisms share similarities to varying degrees not only among themselves but also with the life forms that existed millions of years ago. These have been a gradual evolution of the life during different periods of geological history that are being existence also. Any populations has built-in variations in characteristics. So individuals with those characteristics which enable them to survive better, fitness of the individual in the natural conditions would overcome the other. Whose are less adapted under the same natural conditions cannot overcome. So the fitness of the individual according to the Darwin refers ultimately and only the reproductive fitness. Such fit individuals leave more progenies with more fit individuals than the others. So they are selected by nature. So that's why we call it as natural selection to survive and reproduce to increase their population size. So branching descent and natural selection are the two key concepts of Darwinian theory of evolution. So Darwin considered natural selection as the mechanism of evolution. So Alfred Wallace was the naturalist during the Darwin's time concluded that new life forms arise and evolve in due to course of time. All the existing forms of life share certain similarities and common ancestors. These ancestors lived at different periods in the earth history of earth. So the geological history closely correlates with the biological history. The rate of appearance of new life forms is being linked to life cycle or lifespan of an organism. For example, microbes that divide very fast with a generation time of 20 minutes and so. So, speciation can occur within a few days, whereas in large animals it would take millions of years as their lifespan are in years. So, the term fitness has the genetic basis for getting selected to evolve. So, adaptive ability is inherited and has a genetic basis. Fitness in the end result in the ability to adapt and get selected by the nature. Natural selection is based on certain observations which are factual and that are as follows. Coming to the next, natural selections are limited, so population are stable in size except for seasonal fluctuations. Members of populations show variations of every characteristics. No two members of the populations are identical, even though they show similarities. The theoretically, the population size will grow exponentially if everybody reproduced at a maximum capacity. It is seen in growing bacteria microbial population. So the population size is the reality is limited. It is due to competition among the individuals for resources, and only those which are better adapted could survive and reproduce at the cost of others who are less adapted to that habitat. The insight of the Darwin was that he asserted that the heritable variation that make resource utilization better in some individuals, which will enable them to reproduce and leave more progeny, means nothing but more of their offsprings over a period of time, over many generations. There would be a change in the population characteristics, leading to origin of new forms species, that we call it as speciation. Coming to the next, evidence to prove the natural selection. First one, industrial melanism. In a collection of moths made in 1850s, before industrialization, it was observed that there were more white-winged and dull-grayed moths on the trees than the dark-winged or melanized moths. So the white colored lichens covered the trees, nothing but fungus and algae. The union of fungus and algae, white color, they are looks white in color, that covered the trees. In that background, the white winged moth survived, but the dark colored moth were being picked out by the predators by with camouflage. However, in the collection carried out from the same area, but after industrialization, before industrialization, it is like the black were more affected than the white because of white colored lichens. Okay, after industrialization, that is in 1920, there were more dark winged moths in the same area, means that proportion was reversed. So this was explained that predators will spot a moth against the contrasting background. So because of the industrialization, the white colored lichens is being covered with dust. So now the background is black. So on the background, the white colored moths are more probably seen by the predators. So during the post-industrialization period, the tree trunks become dark due to industrial smoke and soot. Under this condition, the white-winged moths do not survive due to predators. So the dark-winged or melanized moths survive. This we call it as camouflage. The obtained study was compared with areas where industrialization do not occur. That is, example in the rural areas, the count of melanic moths was low because there is no much industrializations in rural areas. Conclusion: in the mixed population, the individuals that are better adapted can survive and reproduce in large numbers, that is, and increase their population size, and no variance was completely wiped out. For example, this picture will clearly show about industrial melanization. So these are white colored lichens. So under this background, this is before industrialization, this is after industrialization. Before industrialization, the white color moths has the more advantage to survive because of this white background, which will be camouflaged to this background, and the black will have the more things to for the predators, are more available for the predators because it can be recognizable very easily on this white background. And this is the picture about post industrialization, means after the industrialization, there are more the predators will be seen with this white moths than the black because of the industrial dust. Everything was been on this white lichens. So this is about lichen covered trunk and lichen free soot covered trunk. And next, resistance to chemicals. Use of pesticides, insecticides has resulted in resistant varieties of organisms in a less time. For example, DTT, resistance in mosquitoes. It is also true for microbes. Many antibiotic resistance varieties of bacteria causing bacteria are appeared in a very short period of time. Priorly it was the with the small amount of antibiotics only the bacteria can be easily killed. Now they are also attain the ability to resist against that antibiotics. So these are the examples of evolution due to anthropogenic actions produced by humans. So this shows that evolution is not a direct process but a statostatic process, means change and probability that is based on the chance events in the nature and mutations in the organisms. This is the picture which shows a bunch of bacteria including a resistant variety. Next, get bathed with antibiotics, most of the normal bacteria has been died. So the resistant bacteria multiply and become more common eventually the entire infection evolves in a resistant strain. So this is the resistant strain here. This strain is more, and this on reproduction has been evolved more, and this increases its number. Next, artificial selection. Man has domesticated many wild animals and plants. He has also selected many plants and animals and carried out the intensive breeding program to raise the new varieties of plants and animals for agriculture, horticulture, sport, or security. He has raised a number of high yielding breeds of animals like cows, buffalo, poultry, birds, etc., and crops like varieties of wheat, rice, maize, pulses, etc. Adaptive radiation. Adaptive radiation is an evolutionary process in which an ancestral stock gives rise to a new species in the given geographical area, starting from a point and literally radiating to other geographical areas or habitats. For example, Darwin's finches. These are small black birds which Darwin observed in Galapagos Island. There were many varieties in the same island. He reasoned that after originating from a common ancestral seed eating stock, the finches must have radiated to different geographical areas, undergone adaptive changes, especially in the type of the beak, living in isolation for long. So, the new kind of finches emerged that could function and survive for a new habitats. Means the modification of the beak happened based on the what of the geographical area they have gone through. For example, large ground finch. This is for seeds. Cactus ground finches. This is for to eat more of cactus fruits and flowers. This is the vegetarian finches for the buds. This is the woodpecker finches for insects. So the beak has been modified based on their environment and based on their food resources. So Australian marsupials. A number of marsupials, pouched mammals, each different from other, evolved from the same ancestral stock within Australia. When more than one adaptive radiation appeared to have occurred in an isolated geographical area with different habitats, we call it as convergent evolution. Means starting from one point. So placental mammals of Australia shows a parallel evolution that have evolved from other marsupial mammals, each of which closely resembles and looks similar to a corresponding marsupials. So the parallel evolution of Australian marsupials and placental mammals are given below. So for example, marsupial mole, so which is we call it as mole, and numbat, which is an anteater. Marsupial mouse, so which is similar to the mouse. So spotted cuscus, which is lemur, which came from lemur. So flying phalanger, so sugar glider, which is the common ancestor is placental mammal is flying squirrel. Tasmanian tiger cat, so which is the origin from bobcat. Tasmanian wolf, which is a ancestral from wolf.